Dating today can seem like a sea of rejections. One no after another, one more woman ghosting you, one more girl turning you down when you finally have worked up the courage to approach her. It can feel endless and exhausting. So, what makes rejection feel so devastating by some men while others seem to brush it off easily? What is the key difference between these two types of daters? That is what we are diving into right now. Welcome back to The Naked Connection. This is the show that supports driven men to reach sexual mastery and build deep connections. It's Kirsten, and before we get any further, please take a moment and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss a single episode. Today, we are diving into the world of dating, how to build bulletproof confidence, how to transform rejection from something devastating into something that barely even registers, and how to handle sex in the beginning of a connection, and so much more. To have this conversation, I invited dating coach Connell Barrett onto the show. Connell helps men and women create authentic romantic connections by breaking free from performative behavior and really embracing their true selves. Connell has an incredible perspective on how rejection isn't something to fear, but actually a doorway to finding deeper, more meaningful connection. I cannot wait, you guys. Let's get into it and let's get some. Connell Barrett, welcome to The Naked Connection.
I'm so excited to be with you. Thank you for having me.
I know that we're going to be going into a lot about dating today, and I wanted to kick it off, whether someone's in a relationship or not, and talk a little bit about rejection, because especially in today's day and age, it seems like rejection is something that just naturally happens a lot in dating and also something that we avoid as people. So, understanding that dating can be this emotional roller coaster, and some people seem to handle it really well, and some people it can be really devastating. I'm wondering, from all of your work, what sets the people apart that are able to manage rejection?
Rejection is like a Pandora's box for men in dating. You open it and inside it's something different for everybody. It could be something terrifying, like this person rejected me, so that must mean I'm not enough and I'll never find love, which is how I felt well into my late 30s. Or rejection can eventually become something that you give no power to, where you open the box and there's nothing in it except butterflies. The person rejected you, but you realize, oh, you know what? I guess they're not a good fit for me. So rejection itself is nothing to be afraid of. What we want to do as men, as single men, is take rejection and interpret it in an empowering way, and interpret it in a way that says, hey, this person might not be interested in dating me. That doesn't mean I'm not good enough. It doesn't mean I'm too old or not attractive enough or not tall enough. It just means that, you know what? They like the Rolling Stones and I'm the Beatles, but the Beatles are the greatest band of all time. That's nothing to be sad about or feel rejected about.
Guys, let's talk Father's Day. This is the one day a year when your woman isn't focused all on the kids and might give you that special attention you've been craving. But let's be honest, nothing kills the mood faster than an unkept situation down there. Enter Manscaped Beard and Balls Bundle, because whether you're trimming up top or tackling that undergrowth, you need tools designed for the job. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra handles your most sensitive terrain with skin-safe technology that helps reduce nicks when you definitely don't want them. Meanwhile, the Beer Hedger keeps your facial game on point with 20 adjustable settings. Both are waterproof, both have marathon battery life, and the Lawnmower even comes with built-in lighting to illuminate those hard-to-see areas, because when opportunity knocks, you don't want to be fumbling around in the dark. Join over 12 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and use code NAKED15 for 15% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. This Father's Day, make sure you are ready for whatever comes your way. I can see how it can be really hard in the moment, even noticing like, oh, I'm the Beatles, they're looking for the Rolling Stones, and still having that feeling of, but why didn't she want me?
The real trick is getting to the point where you know you're the Beatles, as opposed to a Beatles cover band, which is the problem. If you go through life, I love that we're talking about this. I'm such a Beatles nerd. But if you go through life feeling like I'm not special, I'm not worthy, I'm a 5, a 6 out of 7 out of 10 at best. However you analyze yourself as a man, if you're not in touch with your worth and value, then that is the problem. Here's a quick story from my past that might illuminate this. Until I was in my late 30s, I thought I was worthless to women. I thought, oh, I'm just a skinny, nerdy ginger guy without a six-pack. I'm introverted. I'm shy. I'm a dork. I like musical theater. Women don't want me. I'm a metrosexual nerd. And the very first night I ever went out to socialize and meet women in a quote unquote approaching context, I had a panic attack. I first had to go into the bathroom stall at this rooftop bar here in New York City. And I started hyperventilating and I had a panic attack. And the reason was because I now realize was because I felt like I was about to find out whether or not I had worth and value to the opposite sex. In other words, I was going to let rejection decide my worth. And that was just a horror story playing in the mind. Now, that's an extreme example. I imagine your typical listener probably isn't hyperventilating in the bathroom like I was, but we're all afraid of rejection. And the secret is to reinterpret rejection, not as some story that says you're not enough. It's to face it and realize if this person likes me, that'll feel amazing. If they don't, if you interpret that as, oh, they're just not for me. Or maybe rejection is rejection in that moment, but it's not life or death. And what I found out that night is after 38 years of wanting to approach women and not doing it, I walked up to a woman where she was wearing a white cowboy hat and she had a couple drinks. She clearly had a nice buzz going and I approached her and she wasn't into me. And we talked for 2 minutes and she just said, nice meeting you. She walked away. I guess you could call that rejection, but I was still there. I didn't burst into flames and she didn't say, ew, get away, weirdo. She just wasn't that attracted to me. And I realized that's not so bad. So I think a real power comes when you realize rejection isn't really that bad. And it's not even really rejection until somebody actually gets to know you.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, yeah, that last piece about until someone actually gets to know you. I think, especially in the dating world now where people are going on so many first dates, or maybe even if you're on a dating app and you're chatting with someone and the woman just ghosts you in the middle of the conversation, never to be heard from again, like that they're not really even able to actually reject you of who you are because they have no idea who you are. And it's just such a weird mind game of kind of quieting the part of the brain that's being like, hey, this is painful, and then making bigger the part of the brain that's able to take more accountability or more insight into what's really unfolding.
Yeah. Those sorts of surface level swipe lefts, I don't even want to call them rejection, but let's call them rejection with a small r. To me, that's no more personal than when I put my name in for brunch at the local Sunday brunch spot and they don't have any tables. And they're sorry, we don't have room for you. Like, I don't take that personally. Why am I going to take some woman who unmatches me or decides not to go on a date with me personally? Don't get me wrong. It took me years to reprogram this mindset because I was the guy having a panic attack in the bathroom. But once I faced the thing I was afraid of, which is that rejection isn't even that bad, but it's not really rejection. Now, if my girlfriend, Jess, sat me down tonight and said, Connell, it's not working out. I don't love you anymore. I'm leaving you for Fabio. I'm leaving you for Arnold Schwarzenegger Jr. Sorry, Patrick Schwarzenegger. Okay, I'd probably feel pretty rejected. But my little unofficial motto, I heard this on a different podcast. I forget the name, but basically, if you're not coming to my funeral, I don't really care what you think of me. I want you to love me, be a nice bonus, but I don't really care what your opinion is of me. And that's a mindset that I find can be empowering in dating. Draw your sense of self and worth from inside of yourself first, from other people distant second.
Ooh, I love that. If you're not coming to my funeral, I'm not worried about what you think of me. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay. So I even see here that you have the word authenticity behind you. For anyone that's listening, he's got it on a board behind him. I'm wondering, just as we've been talking about rejection, about how the more authentic you are into who you are as a person, if that makes quote unquote rejection different or more manageable.
The thing about authenticity is that I believe that we're all a unique snowflake in our own ways, and that everybody has a certain specific uniqueness, and that we want to showcase that in the most attractive, genuine way possible. And then that's going to attract the kind of person who is right for me, for you, for your listener. And with dating, what many men, the mistake, an obvious trap many men fall into is trying to be somebody they're not because social media tells them to say these cool lines or be a quote alpha male, whatever the hell that means, or how to get a woman to chase you, how to create attraction. And what I found is that if you are really authentic, if you're showcasing your true best self and you're being a combination of vulnerable and showcasing your personality, your sense of humor, your insecurities to an extent, but also your core confidence, that's going to be really attractive to somebody who likes your type. And by definition, it might push away somebody who's not your type. And that's okay, because you don't want to be a watered down wine spritzer as a single man on the dating scene. You want to be your version of a double shot of Jameson. Now, not every other person's going to want Jameson, but if that person really likes hard Irish whiskey, they're going to catch a buzz off of you. But if you water it down with tons of ice and water, then you're not even giving the other person that core, real, unfiltered sense of you. So be a 12-year aged, barrel aged proof of whatever your version of a strong drink is.
Yeah.
And that's not going to attract everybody, but we're not trying to attract everybody. We're trying to attract that one special someone.
I totally agree with this in the sense that if you're trying to if you're trying to get everybody to like you, then no one is really going to like you at the end of the day. And then that could be a component of like maybe why dating hasn't been going so successfully. And I think sometimes it can be hard to feel comfortable being yourself, especially in the beginning of dating. And if you are out with someone, they haven't rejected you, and you've gone on a handful of dates, in the beginning, I think oftentimes I feel like we send our kind of best representative of who we are. And maybe that's a version of us, but it's also not a full version of us. And I'm wondering, like, how do we peel back to be the real person in dating in the beginning?
Great question. How do we peel it back? I would say the metaphor I like to use is be an open book, but not an open wound. You go on a first date, or you walk up to an attractive stranger in a social setting, at a bar, at a party, and you want to be an open book. What's an open book have? Hopefully a well-written book has a lot to offer. It's got truth, it's got vulnerability, it's got stories, it's got a snapshot of what that author had to say on those pages that you open to. And so we want to be genuine and real, but at the same time, a book is edited, it's filtered. It's not just, here's anything, it's something of real value. So to me, what authenticity is about, it's anything that's authentic by definition has value, has utility to other people, right? You have an authentic slice of Sicilian pizza. There's no such thing as an authentic slice of crappy Sbarro's pizza. Nobody says authentic. They say, nah, it's a knockoff, right? An authentic Picasso sells for millions of dollars. A copy of a Picasso, which I have on my wall, is probably worth about $100, right? There's something inherently valuable about authenticity because it's real and has certain value in the world. So there is a balance here. I'm not saying you would approach somebody and say something vulgar or say something that objectifies them under the guise of authenticity. You still want to be a person in the world, having empathy and kindness and filter and putting a best foot forward. But the best example I like to talk about authenticity in dating is that same night, the very first night I went out to talk to women and approach in real life, which was in the late 2000s, after I had my panic attack, and after I started talking to some women and had a couple women say, hey, nice meeting you. I'm not interested, but nice meeting you. I started to feel more confident, more myself. And then I started cracking some jokes that are more me. I got out of my head and got more into the social flow. And I approached a really charming, stylish young woman. And we started talking. And I walked up to her and I said, hey, I'm actually pretty shy, but I wanted to meet you. You seem interesting and maybe you're my type. And she looked at me and said, oh yeah, you're real shy. She liked my energy and vibe. She thought it was a line in a way, but actually I was being so vulnerable and genuine that it snapped me into a sense of confidence and a congruence and leaning into it. But actually she really liked my energy and vibe. And we really clicked and connected that night. And that wouldn't have happened had I not first made myself vulnerable to those rejections, shed the ego skin and got to a more real place. And her name, Katie and I really clicked that night. And I never would have gotten there had I not been willing to be rejected and thickened my skin and gotten past it and said, hey, here's the real me. And she really liked it.
I've never heard anyone describe authenticity in that way where it has this sense of value to it. Because I think people throw that word around and it could be, it doesn't mean nothing, but it just is, it's such a broad term that I really appreciate your description of it. And as you were talking, I couldn't help but think about, I'm single and I've been dating, and I have female friends that have also been dating, and a handful of us have had these experiences where you go out on a date with someone, and I think that they're trying to follow the guise of being like, this is me and this is who I am. And in doing so, within the first 15 minutes, have divulged all of the pains of their life and all of the horrible things that happened in their childhood and this and that, and being like, but this is who I am. And it's like a hard balance, because then that is like one side off the ledge, and then like filtering through. I'm just wondering if you have a question someone could ask themselves before sharing something in the very beginning stages of dating.
Here's what that's a great example of perhaps overlearning the concept of being vulnerable and genuine and authentic. And that's all part of the process of getting better at dating. I did the same thing. I overlearned some of my own, or some of the lessons that my best coaches taught me. And here's a tip for every guy on every date for the rest of his life. I'm a big movie nerd, by the way. I love movies. I'm a big fan of cheesy 90s action movies and Tarantino movies and Scorsese movies. Imagine there's a little Martin Scorsese in your head who's watching the action of the date play out, just like Scorsese is watching that movie. And action, and the date's going on. And he's monitoring the date, and he's filtering it through the lens of, is this helping the movie? Is this helping the date go well? Does she feel seen and comfortable? Am I being genuine and sending good positive signals? And if the director, that little Scorsese, notices that the topic has gotten maybe oversharing or negative, or, oh God, I've just talked about Bitcoin for 45 minutes. Maybe I should change to something that's better, then yell cut, and then have that little Tarantino say, and let's do take two, and move it back towards some good date strategy. Because yes, you can be super vulnerable and real and genuine, but anything can be overdone, right? You can be an open wound, not an open book, which is why the metaphor I like to use. So I like to have a little director in my client's mind saying, okay, we're talking about light, fun topics that she's into, that I'm into. We're flirting, we're being ourselves. Keep it rolling. And then just let that director understand, hey, is this helping the date right now, helping the movie of the first date, or is it hurting? And then make adjustments as you go.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's a really fun way to think about it. And I always think almost like gamifying things can be really helpful. So it doesn't have to feel so heavy and so serious. So even doing that in the mind is like a fun game to play with yourself.
Absolutely. Oh, tell me more about gamifying, because I love that idea. What can you elaborate more what you like to do to gamify anything dating related or romance related?
Oh, this is not dating related, but I just started teaching myself Spanish and using Duolingo, which is basically all games,
Yep.
and noticed how I feel so much more pulled to it. But that's like where the gamification word came dropped into my head just now. But I think that in thinking about dating, this was something that I actually heard a long time ago was this idea of going out into your city as though you are a tourist in your own town
Ooh.
and seeing how you engage with people. And so I like to play the game of tourist when I'm at the farmer's market or if I'm walking down one of the main streets and imagining that I don't actually live here. Because I think when we're in that state of mind, we're more likely to talk to strangers. We're more likely to approach the attractive
Hmm.
person because you don't live here. Who cares? You're never going to bump into them at the gym, you know? So it brings a different vibe and energy. And so that's a game I like to play and just making things more of an experiment. I think
I
we
love
get so
that.
stuck in, oh, I have to talk to this person and meet this person. I had a friend of mine who is just incredible at approaching people. He can walk up to anybody and talk to anyone. And so him and I live in San Diego, so him and I would meet and we would go on these beach walks. And he would point out people and I would go up and approach them. And we made it into this game of what's it like if you walked up and just said hello to this person reading a book on the beach?
Right.
How does that go? And we would go back and forth. And so practicing, initiating conversations with people more of a game is something that's been super fun
That's
for me.
brilliant.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I would do that with my wingmen early on in my dating journey.
Mm.
Because I never approached any women at all until my late 30s. Then I finally started doing it, and then I started to get to practice it. And I was trying to find ways to stay motivated. And my former wingman and I at the time would do things like we had to approach whatever other person we pointed the other guy to on penalty of a punch in the shoulder. I'm not suggesting violence, but basically, Connell, go approach those three women sitting with that big muscular guy, or else I'm going to punch you in the shoulder. And that led to a really interesting story that might be relevant here for any men listening to this who've always wanted to approach a woman but feel intimidated by it. My then wingman Tyler and I, we were at this lounge in New York City many years ago, and he points me to a table with two women, one brunette, one blonde, very well dressed and stylish, and a big muscular guy with them. He said, go over there, grab that available seat and go join them. And I thought, he's gonna punch me. He doesn't want me over there. I'm gonna get beat. I'm a skinny, nerdy ginger. This guy looked like a bottle of muscle milk made corporeal. Like, this guy was all muscles. So he's like, do it or else I punch you in the shoulder. I walk over, I sit down, and I say, hey, you guys, you look friendly. How's your night going? I was just being really friendly, just a very friendly approach. Inside, I'm scared to death, but I'm trying to project confidence. Anyway, the girl with brown hair, she leaned toward me. Her eyes got really big, and she said, oh my gosh, you just came over here and sat down and talked to us. Do you know what you are? And I'm like, a guy is about to get his butt kicked by your boyfriend? I don't know, but I didn't say that. I said, I don't know. What do you mean? What am I? She said, you're normal. Thank you for just coming over and saying hi to us. And then she pointed to another guy at a different table. And she said, see that guy over there? He's been staring at us for 20 minutes and it's creeping us out. And by the way, I was that other guy for a long time.
Yeah.
She was basically saying, if you just sort of commit to the friendly, good intentioned approach, you can walk up to people and it goes really, really well. And she was appreciative. And by the way, the big muscly guy was not her boyfriend. He was just a friendly guy. He actually was very friendly and cool. And I ended up getting her number. And we never actually went out. I never saw her. It was just a phone number in the night. But it was a great lesson that reminded me that working on your dating life, taking action and doing these social experiments, as you were talking about, Kirsten, is it a little bit unusual to have to work on your dating life? I guess it is. Maybe that's a little bit strange or odd. But you know what's weirder and odder to people? It's looking at somebody and just staring at them and not talking to them. That's weird. So if you're going to approach, go do it. Or if you're not going to do it, fine. Just talk with your friends, but commit either way.
Okay, I love this. And because I think that no matter, just being friendly and saying hello to people, I think that we build up these moments of introduction into this huge thing in our minds, and it doesn't necessarily need to be. So when you were doing all of this practice, did you have any go-to icebreakers, or was it just even simply saying, hi, looks like you're having a great time. I wanted to introduce myself.
Yeah, I needed a lot of go-to icebreakers at first because I kept telling myself, what's the thing that's going to make it go well? And sure, I would have things in my back pocket, nothing super fancy, usually something like, hey, what's up? You guys look friendly, because I wanted them to be friendly. So I was projecting that friendliness onto them. And I absolutely did some things that didn't work. I worked with some quote unquote pickup artist guys who were super popular at the time of me learning this in the late 00s. And I did some kind of pickup type things, and that didn't work that well. It felt weird, but I tried it. And what I learned was if I just walked up and I just went with what I was thinking and feeling in that moment, leaning toward vulnerability and genuineness. But sometimes that might be, hey, I'm in the zone now. And then I felt a more confident, fun, playful side of me come out. That's what worked best, was playfulness, fun. You talked about gamifying aspects of dating, which I love. I love the idea of how can we make this approach fun? How can we turn this into something that is enjoyable hopefully for both of us, but I'm going to try to bring some fun to your table. So I learned that I would do 2 or 3 sort of planned, rehearsed opening lines, and then I would let go of that over the course of the night. And I learned that when I would just walk up and say the first thing that entered my mind, that kind of spontaneity was really attractive to people. And also the best quote unquote content that came out of my mouth was usually in the moment. Because think about it, in life, we don't really go through life planning what we're going to say for the most part, unless you're going in to ask your boss for a raise or recite your wedding vows or something. But we mostly go through life improvising. And so I try to avoid giving men scripted opening lines other than something very, very simple. Hey, how's your night going? I like your style, or something like that. If that gets you talking to those people, great. But otherwise, we want to get out of your head and get in that present moment, because that's where your best, present, and often funniest and charismatic side is living.
I could see even just walking up and being like, I realized I actually don't know what to say to you. If that's your truth, let it out. Yeah.
I have a client, one more quick story, because you just reminded me of something. I have a client, he goes by Ari. Ari so I do in-person coaching with men here in New York, where we go out one-on-one. I'm literally shoulder to shoulder with them, being their wingman in bars and lounges and coffee shops and things. And I was out with Ari last summer, I think it was. And his big thing was, I don't know what to say. What do I say to women? And I said, I got your back, bro. Tonight, I want you to say exactly what I tell you to. He's okay, great. And I said, see those 2 women over there? Walk up to them and say, hi, I'm Ari, and I don't know what to say to you. Go. And I made him walk up and own the fact that he didn't know what to say. And it went amazing. She didn't even hear it. All she knew was, hey, the stylish, cool, socially adept guy was talking to me, and he had a great interaction, got a phone number, set up a date. And he thought he had to say some perfect line. So yeah, I love the idea of walking up to people and literally saying the first thing that enters your mind, or even better, saying, hey, I'm sober, I'm not in the zone, and I'm talking to you. Hi, I'm Connell. And then just seeing what happens. You never know what's going to click with somebody. Pickup lines are overrated is what I'm saying. Planned pickup lines are overrated. The best pickup lines are things you don't plan.
Given that we started this conversation talking about rejection, just from my experiences and from speaking with many other people that are single, how much women want to just have organic conversations, and how much they do truly want to just have someone come up and say hello. You seemed like someone I would want to meet. And that from there, a conversation and an engagement and potentially a connection can so easily form, and that getting over the hump of that initial piece might seem really big and daunting. And also on the other side of it has opportunity so easily available. And I guess because I do think that that is something that, and being sensitive with, I know a lot of men find that they don't want to approach a woman because they don't want to be like creepy or weird or come on too strong. And I had a guy at the gym once come up to me, and he was someone that I knew like in a friendly manner, and he fist bumped me like, "Hey, nice job on that." And then 10 minutes later came over and apologized because he was like, "I just realized that I touched you without your consent." And it just made me recognize, whoa, there's a lot of hypersensitivity for some people around making sure that now I'm not approaching someone in a way that might be intrusive or uninvited. And what do you say to moving through all of that?
If you're a man who is worried and concerned about bothering women, that's a sign of your mental health. You're kind. You don't want to bother people. You don't want to come off as weird or creepy. It's coming from a really good place. It's a sign that you're healthy. You know who doesn't feel that way? Sociopaths, psychopaths. So don't beat yourself up if you're worried about bothering somebody or coming off as creepy. It's coming from a really good place, but we can overlearn any lesson, right? And what I like to do is I don't really think of it as an approach. I don't even like the word approach that much. I use it in my coaching because we all know what that means. But to me, an approach is something that can be rejected. Here's the windup, here's the pitch, and it'll either be accepted or rejected. I like to think of it more as an icebreaker, just a social an opening, a potential conversation opener. And it could last 5 seconds. And so I give my clients openers that are almost rejection proof. Nothing is totally rejection proof because we can't control other people, of course, but we can break the ice in a way that essentially is, we know it's not creepy and weird, and it invites a positive or at least a polite response from the other person. And then you can read their reaction and make a judgment. Is this person somebody who wants to be talked to right now? And then you can keep talking and knowing you're on good social standing. Or if they give you some body language that shows they're not looking to speak right now, then you can say, "Oh, just wanted to say that. Have a nice day." So what I like to give men to do, I give men 3 simple options when they want to break the ice with a woman in public who they're interested in. I don't have them do a direct sort of a hitting on them type of approach. I don't make it about her body or even her physical appearance. I just give them option A, B, and C. What's a G-rated compliment you can give her? What's a question you could ask her that makes sense given where you are? And the third thing is, what is an observation you can make that's a little bit unusual about something happening with her, with you, with where you are? You can call out that observation. And if you go with question, compliment, or observation, always G-rated, it's really hard to do anything that is socially creepy or weird. And even if you come close to that, a woman will give you the signals, and you can read that as a very socially calibrated guy. So 3 really quick examples would be, a compliment might be, "Oh, hey, I see you play the piano. That's really cool. I love that you have a piano in your home. How long have you been playing?" You know, I'd be genuinely curious as a person, not hitting on you. I'm just genuinely asking a question. Or a compliment might be, "Hey, excuse me, miss, I really like that tattoo. It's a really cool tattoo you have on your wrist of the boot of Italy. What made you get that?" You know, so you're giving a compliment, asking a question. Or maybe in public, you notice something a little bit unusual about what's happening. I was in the gym once, and the woman in my yoga class had a water bottle that was shaped like a flask. It wasn't a flask, it was a water bottle, but it was shaped a lot like a flask. It was a clear flask-shaped water bottle. And that was unusual to me because it was a flask. And I said something like, nothing like martinis to break up the monotony of downward-facing dog. And she laughed, and we had a nice conversation. So if you go with question, compliment, observation, it's almost rejection-proof. And then you read how she responds, and then you can go from there.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's holding those 3 in the back of the mind is really, really helpful. And this is reminding me too of, I just want to also share like that this isn't a one-way street. Obviously, women can approach men, and also that hopefully women are taking it upon themselves to also share signals of interest. If they're out, have they made eye contact with you? Have they kind of given you body language signs that they are interested in wanting to engage further? I would hope that women are doing that, engaging in their part of this dynamic as well, and that those are cues to be able to read and assess and continue to move forward with. One thing that I do want to get into a little bit, because I know on the show, we talk about dating and relationships, and we also talk a lot about sex, of this piece too in dating of when to invite in sex, or like how to even broach that topic.
That's a great topic. Everybody is so individual into how they feel about sex, when it's okay to talk about it, when it's okay to have it. Everyone is very different. And so much of dating, what I advise men to do is lead the dating dance while also being incredibly cognizant of how the woman you're with on that date, for example, how she's feeling about where you're leading things. So you're leading the dance, but of course you're constantly noticing how she's feeling, trying to. And so the topic of sex might come up on an early date, and you'll read how she feels about that. Maybe she loves talking about it, which I've had deep, raw conversations about sex with women early on in the dating phase. I've also had women who clearly weren't comfortable talking about it, and I didn't go there because maybe one or both of us didn't want to. Big question I get more than any other is when to have sex for the first time, or when to lead it there. And really, it's such an individual thing. I've had relationships, and I've had clients who've had relationships where they waited 6, 7, 8, 10 dates, which is totally fine depending on what those two people want to do. I once dated the woman who became the love of my life for a time, and we hooked up on the first date. We were just super comfortable with each other, and it was a approach that led to what we thought was going to be a one-night stand. It became a 1,000 night stand and started from the first night. So everybody's different, but a general rule of thumb from the man's perspective is, I want to lead this to where we both want it to go at a rate of speed we're both comfortable with. And everybody moves at a different rate of speed. So you really want to notice how your partner, your date, is feeling about things, and understand that we want to lead things, but with a lot of empathy and respect for how she's feeling, but also be moving it forward. I don't just mean sexually, but emotionally as well. And just seeing how you both feel as you go. And you can feel free to give me your point of view, Kirsten. You know better than me about what women feel. But I found that generally women like a feeling that this is moving forward. And also women like to feel, but he's also really noticing how I'm feeling, and that we're moving forward at a pace we're both comfortable with.
You're so right. And this piece of everyone is so different, and every relationship is going to be vastly different. And I don't believe that there is a right or a wrong way to do things. And I think that relationships have proven that, where you're even describing hooking up on the first interaction versus waiting 3 months and what can unfold in a more deeper emotional relationship connection, regardless of when intimacy is invited into it. And I think that oftentimes, thinking about from a woman's perspective, and this again, broad strokes here, thinking that, having a sense of that this is progressing somewhere that we're both wanting this to progress to, that whatever that actually means, maybe that means that we're moving towards having a casual lover dynamic, and we enter into, what are we moving towards, and are we both moving towards the same thing? And also, I think a sense of safety as well, whether that's something conscious or not. Do I feel safe with this person to enter into a sexual space with them? And that is something that can happen within 2 hours or within 2 months. So I think of those two things.
I think that's the magic word that you just said, safety. Is the other person, let's assume we're talking about a straight man dating a straight woman, just for the sake of this conversation. Does she feel safe with me? And do I feel emotionally safe, that I'm ready to be vulnerable, and intimacy is a vulnerability for both of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a wide range of experiences. And what I've learned is that, yeah, the woman we hooked up with that first night, we were both very comfortable doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the other end of the spectrum is there's a whole chapter in my book, a chapter I'm really proud of, about dating in the Me Too era, where a woman who became the love of my life, I actually dedicated my book to her. And her name is Alex. That's the name she chose to go by. That's not her real name. She and I were good friends for a long time before we ever had sex. And she was also the victim of sexual assault during our friendship together.
Mm-hmm.
And when things turned romantic with us, we both took it very slow, because I wanted her to feel as safe as possible. And that, even though it was a short-term relationship, as I write about in my book, the fact that we waited and we were extremely careful about how safe she felt, it led to a really wonderful, powerful, intimate, and emotional connection. So you're right. There's absolutely not a one size fits all here. What we need to do, I think, is just have 1,000% empathy, calibration to how the other person is feeling. Pardon the cliche, but just great communication, so that the two of you can go to bed as quickly or or put it off a ways, as long as you both feel safe and that you have a real great connection. You can't go wrong. But safety, I think, is the watchword here.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Yeah. And this might be a little bit stepping back, but I know that in today's dating culture, and I live, excuse me, I live in California. And so there's a lot of, it seems sober culture is becoming more and more of a thing, especially in the dating space, of like, how can we go on dates that don't involve alcohol? And it kind of goes against what a lot of cultural beliefs, that like alcohol enhances our sexual experiences, as well as, our liquid courage, our confidence, our sense of self. And I'm wondering, because I know that you've spoken about this, and like what your take on alcohol or just substances in terms of dating and sex.
I think sober is the new sexy.
Ooh.
I think sober is so damn sexy. There was on SNL a couple of weeks ago, Jack Black hosted SNL, and they did a sketch called The One Uppers, where everybody was trying to one up each other with these virtue signaling things about what they were doing. And Bowen Yang played a character who at the restaurant said, "Oh, no drinks for me. I'm sober. I'm just going to have tonic water." And everybody was like, "Oh, you're so cool." But it's become something that, instead of having to apologize or sheepishly feel like, am I weird because I'm sober? Am I going to come off as somebody with a problem? Now I really do think it's so sexy and attractive, because what does sobriety say about somebody? It says they don't need the crutch of alcohol to be themselves. They can have fun. They can catch a buzz off of the other person, not off of the Jack Daniels. And by the way, I have no problem with drinking. I drank plenty until 2 years ago, when I went totally sober. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of benefits to dating sober. The benefits include, if you create a connection with somebody, you're not using the buzz of the alcohol as a way to get a false connection. It's really real, or it's a lot more real than with alcohol. And if there's no alcohol involved, there are times in dating, especially for men, when we just have to make a move. Gotta take some kind of social romantic risk, whether it's that approach or going for that first kiss or a compliment that you want to say something flirtatious. And doing it without alcohol means you have to do it with, instead of liquid courage, you have to summon actual courage. and using actual courage in your love life, I think, is an incredibly powerful way to grow into an even better version of the man you are. And if I condensed everything that I coach into a sentence, it would be: take courageous, authentic action every day with respect for women and empathy. And without alcohol, you have a clearer mind. You're noticing how she feels. You can be more empathetic. You can also say, I'm nervous, but I'm going to use courage to make this move or make the approach or tell her I want to see her again or whatever it is. So I just think there's so many benefits to sobriety. I think it's sexy. I think it shows, obviously, you're committed to health. And yeah, it's a turn on. I'm so glad that I'm sober 2 years in, and I've had my last drink.
I love that slant. That it's like a slogan. Sober is the new sex.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Again, I have no problem with people who drink.
Mhm.
My girlfriend, Jess, we joke that she's drinking for two, me and her.
Yeah.
But I have no problem with people who drink. For me, it was a toxic relationship, no pun intended, that was ready to end.
Mhm. Yeah, I actually had a client a while ago who was dating a woman, and we were having a conversation about their sex life. And what ended up coming up was this element of recognizing that they hadn't had sex sober yet.
Whoa.
And even if it was like, oh, let's have a bottle of wine tonight, or let's go out to drinks with dinner, and this recognition, oh, wait, I haven't actually had a fully sober sexual experience. And it was just a really interesting kind of dawning moment for this person, and for him to sit in that, and just all of the possibility that you just described what happens in dating. And I think that the same can really be true in sex as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't mind sharing something. I'm 53, and part of the reason I gave up drinking was because there were some times when I had trouble getting an erection.
Mm.
I'd never dealt with ED before. And my girlfriend's beautiful, gorgeous. I'm so turned on by her in every way. So it sure as heck wasn't her. It was the alcohol in my system. And it was actually creating a similar problem even when I wasn't drinking at that time. There
Mm.
was just my system always had a certain amount of whiskey in it most days. And since I've been sober, I'm happy to say I've never had that issue again. And I can't promise any other guy, anything in that department.
Mhm.
But I do know that it just feels so good to be able to know I'll be able to perform at my very best. And it just feels so much better to show my beautiful, amazing girlfriend how I feel about her in all the ways, including in the bedroom, and not have any self-doubt about being able to please her the way that I love to please her. So
Mm.
for me, I know a lot of your listeners are maybe late 40s, early 50s. I'm not trying to thump a Bible here. I'm a big believer in there's really almost no downside to going sober, or at least cutting down. And there's just so many upsides.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. What you're describing here, it's reminding me of kind of, we can get into these spirals, and thinking too just about, like the like in the dating, like this like rejection spiral, or
Mm,
like you have one bad experience, and then that creates this hesitation, and then that hesitation leads to more awkward encounters. Or, oh, I'm nervous, so I'm going to drink this alcohol, but I'm going to have a drink before I go meet up for this date. And then
right.
you get in these spirals with certain things. And I'm wondering, do you have any advice on how to really break out of those spirals, and be as comfortable in, as you described, your authentic self without, whether it's alcohol or whether it's like this fear of rejection, and just to be?
Yes. So when I was approaching women, when I was learning about going out to meet women, I primarily did it sober. And I did it both with some drinks and without. And my best nights, the nights when I felt the most charismatic and confident in myself, was when I was totally sober. So I was treating it like a social experiment. I remember one night in Miami, this is 12, 13 years ago, I was at a club called Nikki Beach in Miami
Mm.
Beach. And I was at Nikki Beach, and I just said, you know what? I'm really going to commit to I'm going to take action. I'm going to crack jokes. I'm really going to put myself out there. And I wasn't drinking. And the first two or three approaches were really hard. Okay. I was in my head. I was nervous. But then I did a few, and all of a sudden I let go. And I really got into what I call that radically authentic self. And I'm being silly and cracking jokes. I'm a very playful person. And I'd be doing a lot of improv at the time. So I was learning fun improv drills to just basically get out of my head, get in my body. And I felt more drunk that night than I had ever felt before. And it was totally holistic and natural. It was all just dopamine and good mojo. And one woman actually said, "What are you drinking? You're like totally drunk, aren't you?" I'm like, I gave her my glass of water and let her sample it because I was just so in the zone. And I realized you can actually get buzzed off of being genuine and honest and real and giving value. and just having fun with your friends and looking at every approach as a win, as opposed to rejection if they don't like you. And that was one of the best nights I ever had in terms of just going out and socializing. And I was stone cold sober. So it's more work than having 2 or 3 quick drinks, but it's so much healthier. And you can get even more confident, even more comfortable in social situations while sober. You just have to put in a little more effort to get the wheels off the runway, but it can be done. And then you don't have to worry about hangovers, and you have total clarity in what you're doing. No more mistakes. You're making clear decisions, and it's the best.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing all of your wisdom today. I know that there's so much more that we could have dove into, and this is just the beginning. I love that you're taking this approach that isn't rooted in these like tips and techniques and say these things to get this, because that will only take you so far. And it sounds like your approach is really maybe more upfront work, perhaps, to get over that hump, but so much better in the long run in terms of who you're going to attract, what type of women you're going to attract, and what type of relationships you're going to have available to you.
Yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it. I couldn't say it better than you just did, Kirsten. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Connell, for being here today with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for doing what you do. This is a really great podcast. It was my pleasure to join you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Naked Connection. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode. Trust me on this, your sex life and that special someone in your life will thank you for it. And if you really love the show, please take a moment and leave a 5-star review or a written review and let me know what you think. It would mean so much to me and this show. Until next time, happy connecting.